How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame here, back with another preseason FPL video. And today we're going to be looking at 5 mistakes that you need to avoid coming into this FPL season. If you haven't done so already, make sure to follow us on all the different socials. It's Pilot Flame 226, as you can see down below. So subscribe over on YouTube. It really helps out the channel. Make sure to like the videos if you enjoy them, and give us a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. That's where we do our gaming discussions on Twitch, and where we post all of our content over on Twitter. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first avoid on our list is making early transfers. Now, if you're looking for a player that you could potentially be swapping into your team, or maybe you kind of going into this game week, you were pretty worried about that player and they do well, and the player that you want to take out didn't do so well on the same day, and there's still a couple of games left to go, you probably should avoid bringing that player in right away. They could potentially get injured in training. They may have a game midweek, which they could play in, which could see them being benched the following game week, and then just chasing points ends up being a whole bunch of hits, and then you're just you're down way further than what you were if you were just patient. And I think that sometimes making the early transfers can pay off, but in most cases it doesn't necessarily do so. Now, some may argue that, you know, if you need a certain price rise, let's say for example you want to bring in Marcus Rashford, but you know that if he rises tonight, then you won't be able to get him. You'll be 0.1 off, and that can happen. So you have to kind of make sure that if you're going to bring him in, that he's not got a midweek game. You know, the likelihood of him getting injured in training is unlikely. But again, you probably want to see all of the games out before you start making your transfers. And what I like to do personally is, if I'm going to bring in somebody for the following game week, I write down the list of reasons why, or I think about the reasons why, and then towards the end of the game week, or towards the end of the week itself, coming up to the next game week, I then go look back at those reasons and see if they're still valid for the coming game week, or if I've changed my mind as to why I want to bring in that player, or maybe a different player that I'm looking to bring in. So those kind of things kind of play into it. And also, definitely avoid rage transfers. If it's somebody that's like, oh, this player's just been terrible, we need to just take him out of the team, you take him out, you bring in somebody else, they get injured in the game on the Sunday of one of the players that you're bringing in, and then it's it's curtains from there. Then you have to take that player out or find somebody that you can sub in for the following week and that sort of stuff, and then it just becomes a whole bunch of big mess, really. So if you can avoid early transfers, yes, to catch some price rises can be quite good, but again, that's the risk that you play. And with the fixtures being quite congested, early transfers may be a bit more punishing than normal this season. The next thing you should avoid up on our list is using your chips early. Now, we do have 2 wildcards in the entire season, the first one being used before the end of game week 16, and the other one being used from January onwards. Now, I want you to set up your team in such a way where the first, at least 3 game weeks at a bare minimum is going to be solid for those 3 game weeks. Yes, you may be looking at transfers, like let's say Aubameyang out in game week 3 for a Manchester United or Manchester City asset, but make sure that the bulk of your team, at least I would say 9 out of your 11 starting players, as well as your bench options, are going to be, in there for the first 3 game weeks for sure. So like Timo Werner is an example. He does play Liverpool in game week 2, but he has good fixtures either side of it with Brighton and West Brom. So you're going to keep him in for those 3 game weeks, and he's going to be one of those players that if he has a good run of fixtures, let's say he has 10 fixtures and 2 of which are, okay or bad, just keep him in for those fixtures for the most part, unless you can kind of switch him in and switch him out for a little bit of a longer period. And that's where making early transfers in our first point kind of is quite bad, because if, let's say you take Timo Werner out, the player you brought in gets injured, you want to bring him back in, maybe he does good against the likes of Liverpool or the big 6 teams, as it were. So you should definitely avoid doing that. But in terms of the chips themselves, so wildcard, you don't want to be going into game week 4 knowing I'm going to definitely wildcard this game week. You want to save it for as long as possible, and especially this season, since that there's going to probably be double game weeks as early as, middle of January, really. We see that they're going to be removing the international break there after the new year, and they're going to be making some teams play multiple games in a single week in the first part of January, and then others are going to be playing in the latter part of January or February, I think it is. So we need to keep an eye out for that as to which teams do, and that could set up some double game weeks where you might want to, maybe use your wild card around Christmas time to bring in for the better fixtures, and maybe some injuries happen over Christmas time. Maybe there's heavy rotation or players fall out of favor, so you kind of want to save your wild card as best you can for that, as well as the likes of your triple captain, your free hit, and that sort of stuff for the double game weeks later on. Potentially, there's going to be there's going to be a lot of people using their chips early on just so they can get their points up high and they can be rank 1 for a week or whatnot. But don't be discouraged by that. Don't use your chips early if you don't have to. If you do get a bunch of injuries, game week 1, game week 2, chances are a lot of people are as well. If you can fix it with a hit, maybe 2 across a couple of game weeks, and you can still have keep the ship afloat, as it were, then I would definitely do that. But otherwise than that, make sure to try to keep your chips kind of safe. Keep them close, keep your cards close to your chest, as it were, so that you can use them in the more impactful game weeks later on in the season when there's double game weeks. The third mistake that you should avoid on our list here is differentials. Don't go looking for crazy differential picks. Yes, a differential is good at the end of the season when you're trying to chase mini leagues, but it's definitely not worth it to ruin your team over, or to be going looking for a crazy captain going into the game week. Now, yes, there are places for it, as an example. So for Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's very good at scoring, he's very good at taking set pieces, and he can get attacking returns as well as a clean sheet. So if you think, hey, look, Trent Alexander-Arnold's playing, let's say, one of the promoted teams, West Brom, Fulham, or something like that, at home, and Liverpool's defense has been quite good in the past few weeks. Maybe you can say captaining him or something like that would be a differential pick. However, you would just probably captain the likes of Salah or somebody like that in the more attacking sense. Yes, he can do double figure holes, but it's not really worth the risk when you can just go with the safer option, because let's say they do concede in the first 5 minutes. For the next 85 minutes, you're going to be bricking over the fact that Salah could score a hat-trick, and you could have just captained him and been quite safe with that. As we also mentioned, don't captain these sort of differential or crazy picks. So if I want to bring in, let's say Sigurdsson from Everton, who's very hit or miss for like a couple of game weeks because he has a couple good fixtures and they seem to be, by the eye test, looking a lot better. You're bringing him in as a differential enough, and okay, the risk may pay off, but don't go crazy with it. Don't captain them. Don't be looking to, expect to get like crazy amount of points. If it pays off, fantastic. It's good that you brought in the transfer, but don't be like, oh, well, this player is a 0.1% owned. I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to play them this game week specifically, and then I'm going to take them out. That's just not worth it, in my opinion. You're going to spend more points and more transfers on stuff that you could have been, a lot better off just kind of saving and kind of being a bit more patient with the players that are going to be ticking along, getting, the good FPL points week in, week out. Number 4 on our avoid list is team loyalty versus FPL emotion. Now, there are some people, much like myself, I'm definitely guilty of it, where we kind of be, or have that kind of bias towards players on our own team. So you may think, oh yeah, Shaw's definitely going to be a ridiculously good FPL asset this season. I know he is, or I think that Bruno Fernandes is better than Kevin De Bruyne, and it's definitely better to bring him in over Kevin De Bruyne, even though he has worse fixtures. There are some people that are going to be emotionally attached to players like that, but you have to separate the two. I like Manchester United just as much as any other Manchester United fan. Same goes for Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea. Doesn't matter what team you follow in the Premier League, you will have some type of loyalty towards them, but you cannot let that cloud your judgment in FPL. You can get emotionally attached by looking at the eye test. Like when you're watching your team play, you get caught up in the emotion. You think, oh yeah, Bruno Fernandes scored this worldie, but in actual fact, he may have only had that one shot in the game, and his underlying stats may have not been that great, which is why it's better to use statistics and logic over kind of just like your heart, kind of like your loyalty towards your team. So if I see that the underlying stats showed that Bruno Fernandes had one shot, it was outside the box, it was from 40 yards, and he's only done that over for the last 5 game weeks, he's only been taking one shot, that United's got no penalties, but I've still kept him in my team, it's probably better to remove him, even though he is a United player and I support Manchester United. And would be better to kind of bring somebody in who is getting more shots. Let's say someone who's a similar price point. Let's say Marcus Rashford's getting, they do play on the same team, but he may be, shooting a lot more. He may be in the box more. If it's someone on a separate team, maybe it's Kevin De Bruyne. Maybe you have that extra 1 million. Maybe he's, getting a lot of shots. City are getting penalties. He's taking a lot of free kicks and scoring them. All these sorts of things that kind of play into the fact that stats prove how good FPL players can be, and that's why you need to kind of strip the emotion from it and kind of look at them from how good they are on the field just straight by looking at them, as well as kind of their underlying stats and how they're performing in terms of FPL, and not just because they play for your favorite team. Number 5 on our list to avoid is a good FPL player versus a good Premier League player. Now, a prime example of this is N'Golo Kanté. Someone who's very good at screening the back four, very good at making interceptions and short passes, and helps his team keep clean sheets. But in FPL, that's not enough for a midfielder. You need to get assists, you need to get goals, and he's not going to be someone that we're going to be looking at. And the reason being, even though he has been player of the season when they won the league at Leicester, player of the season when they won the following season when he went to Chelsea, he's not going to be a very good FPL asset. He doesn't get into the box very often. He has an okay outside shot, but it's not great. And if you just look at some players that are similar price point, Souček as an example from West Ham, gets in the box, is very involved in set play, similar price in 5 million, and is going to be taking a lot more shots than the likes of Kanté, but he does also help out his work defensively to help keep clean sheets. So he's going to be a bit of a better asset in that regard. Same thing can be also said for the likes of Jordan Henderson. Very good at cleaning up, very good at recycling play for Liverpool, but just not very good FPL-wise. Yes, he might score the odd goal 1 in every 12 game weeks or something like that, but you want to be having someone who's a bit more consistent, getting an assist every 3 weeks, or chipping in where they can every 2 to 3 weeks for those cheaper types of players. And in terms of price point, you want to be looking at players that maybe are out of position in a sense. So for 0.5 more, you can get the likes of St. Maximin, who basically plays as another inside forward for Newcastle, and is often the talisman for all the plays that they have going forward. And you want those sorts of players in there for your value picks, unlike N'Golo Kanté. Fantastic player in the Premier League, no doubt about that. Probably, in my mind, the best CDM potentially in the world still at the moment on his day, but not a great FPL asset. And you kind of have to look in terms of other metrics as to what differentiates a good FPL player from a good Premier League player. And the secret bonus mistake that you need to avoid this season is not subscribing to Pilot Flame 226 on YouTube and following him on Twitter and Twitch. That would definitely be a mistake. I would highly recommend subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, as well as following us over on Twitter and Twitch. It's Pilot Flame 226. Links are also in the description. We have so much content coming on all of these platforms, whether it be FPL streams, new videos, new series that we're going to be doing, as well as bringing back old series such as Pep Roulette, where we discuss the potential Man City lineup for their assets in the weeks to come. As well as Buy, Hold, Sell is another series that we do, where we look at players that we think you should buy for that game week and see how they do the following week. Because at the end of the day, these series, this content is all for your benefit, all for your FPL experience to be heightened, and so that you can get a better rank for the end of the season. The weekly discussions are also quite good as well, where you can come in and kind of just chat live and put your opinion across, maybe some recommendations you have for my team, maybe you ask for some recommendations for your team. It's all good fun. We're all in it together. We all start at rank 1 and all have that dream at the beginning of the season, and it would definitely be not beneficial for you if you weren't subscribed to Pilot Flame 226 and all of the stuff that we're going to be doing on our channel here, as well as over on our social as well. So make sure you do that, and we'll definitely be sure to help you out this FPL season. And that's going to do it for today's FPL video. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. And make sure to turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, leave a comment down below as to some mistakes that you're looking to avoid in the coming FPL season. Also, make sure to give us a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. It's Pilot Flame 226, as you can see on those platforms. Links are also in the description. Twitter is where we post all of our YouTube content, as well as our weekly kind of what's coming up in terms of content wise overall across all platforms. And Twitch is where we'll be doing our game week discussion streams. We'll be having one upcoming this week, 7 p.m. EST this week, Friday. So make sure to give us a follow over on those platforms there. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, take care.